When we talk about poverty, we usually hear a single stark number. But what if that number is actually hiding the real story? Today, we're looking at a pretty revolutionary tool that doesn't just measure poverty, it actually maps it out, turning all that abstract data into a landscape you can literally see. Let's dive in. I mean, really think about that. When you hear a poverty rate, it's almost always just one percentage for an entire country or a region. But can one number, can it really tell you everything that's going on? Because what if that single number is masking the real, on-the-ground experience? What if it's hiding these crucial patterns and details that could totally change how we decide to fight poverty in the first place? So to really get a handle on this, we first have to understand why just one number can be so limiting. For years and years, the main way we measured poverty was with a single income line. You're either above it or below it. But that's kind of like looking at an iceberg and only seeing the tiny bit that's sticking out of the water. True poverty isn't just about a lack of cash. It's about not having access to good schools or healthcare. It's about being cut off from your community. It's multidimensional. So the real question is, how do we see what's happening beneath the surface? And that brings us to this incredibly clever solution that does exactly that. Let's check out how a really simple coding concept can be used to visually map poverty. Say hello to the Poverty Graphical Coding Map, or PGC-Map for short. It's basically a tool designed to take all this complex income data and turn it into something simple, visual, and spatial that really anyone can understand just by looking at it. And the way it works is just brilliantly simple. You just look at a household. If they have a steady income, you give them a 1. If they don't, they get a 0. Then you take that code and you stick it into a cell on a grid. That's it. It's this really elegant way to start building a visual story from just raw numbers. And here is the visual key that just unlocks the whole thing. Every 1 becomes a white square for a household with income, and every 0 becomes a black square for a household in poverty. Simple, clear, and, as you're about to see, incredibly powerful. All right, so that's the theory, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's jump over to a case study from Perlis, Malaysia, to see how this all comes together. So researchers applied this exact model to 100 households in Perlis. The result? They got what's called an incidence of poverty rate, or IPR, of 14%. Basically, that means 14 out of those 100 households were living in poverty. Now, if you look at the PGC-Map's own classification system, a rate of 14% puts Perlis squarely in the low poverty category. So on the surface, you'd think, hey, that sounds pretty good. But remember, the whole point of this tool is to look deeper than just that single number. And when they actually laid out those 100 households on the 10 by 10 grid, this is what they saw. The 14 black cells, the households in poverty, they weren't all clumped together in one neighborhood. Nope, they were scattered all across the map, like little isolated pockets of deprivation. Now that is a crucial insight you would completely miss if all you had was the number 14%. Okay, but this is where it gets really cool. What happens when you take that flat 2D grid and you give it a third dimension? And just look at this. This is the magic of visualization. All of a sudden, the data isn't just a grid anymore, it's a landscape. That high green plateau, that represents the 86 households with income, standing on solid ground. And those sharp drops, those pits, those are the 14 households without income. You can literally see the pockets of poverty. And if you look at it from above, like a contour map, it reinforces the same idea. The green is the high ground, economic stability, and those colorful depressions clearly show the exact location of each household that's struggling. It's not an abstract statistic anymore, it's practically a geographical feature. So here's the bottom line of this whole transformation. We've gone from a single, flat number, 14%, to an intuitive, physical landscape of peaks and valleys. Suddenly, the problem of poverty has a shape, it has a location, and it has a texture that we can immediately understand. Now, this is way more than just a clever data trick. Seeing the problem differently lets us think about solving it differently. So, why does this matter for making real-world change? Well, when you see poverty as this scattered landscape of depressions, a single one-size-fits-all policy just doesn't make any sense. Instead, you can design much smarter interventions. You can target development programs directly at those pockets. You can create job training for those specific communities. You can focus on getting schools and healthcare to the precise locations where those depressions show up on the map. It's like using a surgical tool instead of a sledgehammer. And the researchers themselves summed it up perfectly. They said, look, the visual evidence demands a change in strategy. The problem isn't one big, consolidated crisis. So the solution has to be targeted, localized, and focused on filling in those specific depressions in the economic landscape. And that leaves us with a final thought. The PGC-Map offers this powerful new lens for looking at poverty, and it really makes you wonder, what other complex social challenges, from public health to educational inequality, what else could we finally get a handle on if we could just find a way to see it as a map?